materials that you can provide at home. Oh, excuse me, cat. Hello everyone, my name is Julia. I'm a certified Montessori teacher, as well as a mum of a 15-month-old named Isaac and a stepmom to an 8-year-old named Asher. Today's video is how to set up things on your Montessori shelf at home that directly mimic or support Montessori materials and academic activities that you would find in a Montessori preschool. Additionally, this Montessori shelf setup guide can be useful to you even if your child does not attend a Montessori preschool, but you would like to provide Montessori inspired or other activities at home for your child to do that follow the Montessori method at home. So we're talking about hands-on, very directive, self-correcting materials. And please be sure to check out my other video on 6 questions you can ask yourself to see whether a toy is Montessori or not. I will link that down below for you. Also be sure to check me out on Instagram and to subscribe and like, as I post lots of these types of videos and I'm open to suggestions. So please shoot me a message on either YouTube or Instagram of what you would like to see in the future, and I will slot that in. I'm gonna go subject by subject on this, as I thought that was the most logical way to go about it. So the first subject area that I will talk about is math. Math in a Montessori preschool is a very prominent thing. Children will learn not only the concept of numbers and what a physical representation of a number actually looks like, but also the hierarchy of numbers into the tens, hundreds, thousands, and even into the millions. One of the very first mathematical materials a child will work with in a Montessori preschool is the pink tower. And at home, it is very simple to find any sort of tot tower to have as well. When showing a child how to set up a tot tower at home to mimic the pink tower presentation found in a preschool, you would show your child that by placing the next block on top, there is an even space around each of the corners. You'll have to pardon how beat up looking this is. It's gotten a lot of love so far. And you simply repeat that process, showing quietly how when you place the next block in the center, there is an even spacing. And you would continue. The second type of presentation that you can do with the tot tower is when you place the next one to line up 2 of the sides so that they form a completely flush side and another completely flush side. And now you have the other 2 sides that are the step. And so when you're building this kind of tower, it is going to look more like a step. And this is a more complex level of building a tower, as it requires a different sort of balance. And you would demonstrate for each level with your fingers showing that space. The second math material that is commonly found in Montessori preschools are the number rods, and there are varying levels of number rods, which not only take up a lot of space at home, but are also quite pricey as an investment. So if you are wanting to mimic this at home, you can use 2 alternating colors of any Duplo or Lego pieces that you have lying around. And additionally, you can use tape in 1 or 2 colors to create patterns on the floor for your child to practice balancing and moving out the patterns. An easy follow-up activity to the number rods that you can also do at home is to take Lego or Duplo, if you have some lying around, and to arrange them on little cards in certain shapes or to count, and then to have your child place those Lego pieces or the Duplo pieces on top of the shapes that you've created in order to mimic and follow the instructions as well. For any of the number concept and number work that a child will do in a preschool, there are lots of variations at home. I have prepared 2 examples to show for this video, and just bear in mind that all the examples that you see in this video I've made specifically for this video, and so they are not complete sets because I simply don't have the space to store everything as it's being made. And so there are lots of different counting games, counting activities, and with learning how to write the numbers and any of the sandpaper number work, you can make your own DIY sandpaper numbers, which I have shown in my video on how to present number concepts for the very first time in a Montessori style presentation, which I will also link below. But you can also make your own sandpaper or sand tray. This is a very simple DIY sand tray. Here I'm showing it with numbers, and so you would place the number that you would like, and sometimes you can even, stand it up on something. But find some sort of small tray. This is just decorative sand that I got from Michael's, and there are lots of neat variations to this. Obviously, the first variation is using your finger. You can, of course, add arrows or some sort of directive method
spindle
to the number card
activity.
itself.
It's a little bit more open-ended.
I have
still
just
needing
simple dollar store
magnet numbers
again,
and
independent
little bamboo sticks
control
that I am placing
for your child to follow
and counting. And so you
involved.
would encourage a child to be counting
You
out loud for this
lots
of activity.
Things,
Additionally, you can also use a little pot or some sort of container for the child to put whatever object is being used to count.
And again, if you
controls
are going to
for self-correction of the material that you can have are things such as color coding, which number sticks or objects go where. Also providing the exact number of objects that will complete the entire set, depending on how many numbers you are doing.
Going to get used to that muscle memory. So this is an extension of the spindle box activity, which works on not only giving a physical representative to an actual number, but also so that a child can hold that physical quantity in their hand to be able to feel, okay, if I hold 1 of something in my hand, what does that feel like if I hold 2 of something? And so with this activity, there are actually 2 controls. The first control is that you will provide the exact amount of, in this case, it's popsicle sticks, but it could be rocks, it could be marbles, it could be anything that the child will need. And the second control is, of course, the actual physical space that they put them in. So this is a very simple example to put the correct amount of item underneath the number representative. There's also a material which is called the hundreds board, And if a child is not yet ready for this, by the time they get to grade 1, then they certainly will be learning it in the lower elementary years. So that's grade 1, 2, 3. And you can simply mimic a hundreds board using an old Scrabble tile set that you have lying around. Here I'm using a chessboard, which of course is not ideal because, as you can see, a chessboard is only 8 by 8, but for the purposes of this video, it works really well. But Scrabble tiles, and then you simply put a label sticker over, or you tape some sort of piece of paper or number over the letters so that the letter tiles turn into numbers instead, and your child can work on skip counting or just counting all the way up to 100. Additionally, a really fun activity, which is kind of a one-off activity that you can do at home, is a similar sort of activity to the presentations for number concepts and number value in a Montessori preschool. The Montessori material for this has the 10 bead bars, the 100 square, the 1,000 bead cube, and it goes all the way up to 1,000,000. And again, that's a very large kind of material to have at home, but you can simply find other objects, which then, if you feel like painstakingly counting out, 100 or 1,000 of each, simply show your child.
This is 1. This is what 1 looks like. If I put 10 together, this is what 10 looks like. This is what 100 looks like. This is what 1,000 looks like. And this is what 10,000 looks like. And finally, I wanted to show you, if your preschooler happens to be ready to start practicing basic operations, a really easy and fun addition game that you can play at home is to take dominoes and just flip them, and to record or just place number cards showing the correct amounts, or recording in another way the number values. And of course, the dots on the dominoes provide the perfect control for the correct answer or not. It's a very simple and fun activity. You can also use it for subtraction quite easily. And finally, there are lots of variations on using and creating the beads or bead boxes at home. That is going to be for an entirely different video I'm going to make, so stay tuned for that. Admittedly, I ran out of time to make the materials for this video.
The second subject I'm going to talk about today is geometry, and geometry is a massive part of a Montessori learning environment. It is actually a lot more prominently featured in a Montessori classroom than it is, I find, in a lot of other traditional classrooms. And I will be starting a new series shortly on sort of feature or key Montessori presentations for elementary. So stay tuned, because Montessori will feature very heavily in that. But if you want to introduce your child to the concept of geometry at home, there are lots of things you can do even before preschool age into toddlerhood. Things like having a shape sorting cube, and again, there are many variations for that. Providing little puzzles or all sorts of puzzles, chunky puzzles, shape puzzles. This is a very simple one with the 3 basic shapes.
Just make sure that whatever you have, circles are always the easiest, and a multitude of shapes is always the hardest.
And there are lots of activities that you can do to mimic the study of geometry in a Montessori classroom. So material that you will find in a Montessori classroom is the basket of geometric shapes, and the presentation for them is showing how they move and naming each
of the shapes. So for example, you would show this as a sphere, and you'd say, look how it rolls, and you'd let the child roll it around a little bit and then place it off. The next shape is a cylinder, and you would also show that it can lie flat and it can also roll in one direction, and you'd place it off. The next shape would be a rectangular based prism, which you would show can flip, and oh look, it can go on all the sides. Now I'm not showing you all the same shapes as there are in the basket of geometric solids. I just don't have them all on hand, but it would be super fun to recreate this activity with random objects around the house. So I've brought a few examples to show here. A fruit such as a grapefruit can easily show as a sphere. I found a couple of containers, one as a cylinder and another one as a rectangular based prism. You can also get creative with some of the more open-ended toys such as Duplo blocks or Magnetiles. Magnetiles are a great way to build lots of shapes. Just remember that if you are getting your child to do a shape building activity, that you have some sort of picture card or real life example that they can use, again, for that independence factor and a control, so that whatever they're building looks like the example that is being shown.
Take a picture of various things around your house that represent these different shapes and have your child go and find them. So that's a great activity too, because it gets the child moving and getting some sort of physical activity as well. Other geometry activities that you can have at home quite simply are any sort of tessellation materials. And I have several examples. I have this box here with all sorts of random shapes, which then you can take liberties in making all sorts of tracing or coloring activities as well. I also found secondhand, this is a magnetic tessellation board, and so the child will find the correct magnetic shapes. You would take your shapes and fill it in.
And something at home that you can have to replicate what is done with the box of sticks, as is shown here, is to simply take popsicle sticks and any sort of clothespins and find some sort of example page or drawing. I'm just using one of the triangles that I built here, and you just put the popsicle sticks and clothespins together.
I do want to stress that you don't want to have the exact same Montessori materials if your child goes to a Montessori preschool. They will be doing those materials in the classroom, and when they come home, they will have already spent the time with those materials. They don't need the repetition at home for several reasons. First of all, it is part of respecting the method and trusting in the method that the Montessori preschool teachers are implementing without your direct interference at home, even if it is well-intentioned. And secondly, just imagine if you had all of your work set up in your office environment and then you were to come home and have the exact same work that you had to do. That's not necessarily a happy feeling. So just remember that your child's school is their work, and when they come home, they want to play. And so providing things that are a bit more of the play side versus the work side as a supplement to their preschool education is going to be much more helpful.
So after a few days of editing and filming, I realized that if I were to do all the subject areas at once, it would be an extraordinarily long video. So I am going to stop after math and geometry for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 later. And thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.